Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm really excited to show you a lot of artwork made by a lot of children today, and I'm also going to read to you. So this is a bit of a different one. So this was this idea: how can children become active participants in literary research into refugee narratives? Is the kind of maybe slightly over-ambitious question of my time on this fellowship. And I've used the fellowship to follow up on a project that I was part of a year ago, which was asking how do we tell refugee stories for children, and this came out of my PhD research. And I worked with 7 Stories, which is the National Centre for Children's Books in Newcastle, and with the Western Refugee Service, which is a prominent refugee charity in Newcastle. And we brought together, myself with an illustrator and a writer, we brought together a group of refugees and asylum seekers living locally, and we developed a children's book together. And this was a kind of prompting question of that project: how do we tell refugee stories for children, both in the archive and for those with immediate personal experience of seeking sanctuary? And my partner on the project, Lily Cruiser, who's an illustrator, this is one of her drawings of one of our work in progress sessions where we hashed out some of our ideas. That project and this is prompted by a couple of driving ideas. The first one is from Justina Deszczobszak, who is a scholar of childhood studies, and she uses participatory research with children to inform literary criticism. And she argues that if children's literature is to serve a constructive role in promoting young people's rights, then it's necessary on the part of children's literature scholars to combine literary criticism with participatory research and methodologies. And this project is kind of the beginning for me of starting to approach the combination of those two things. And then secondly, the work of Julia Hope is really influential for me in her use of refugee stories in the classroom, and her the importance that she sees for refugee picture books in promoting empathy, in, as she says here, exposing stereotypes and media myths, and the importance of first-hand narratives. And so this again was an impetus for me. So I'm going to read to you. So this is New Home. I brought a bunch of copies with me today, which I will not be taking back with me on the train to Newcastle. Please take one if you want one. There's a QR code next to them, which, if you wish to, you can use to donate to the Western Refugee Service to support their work. I'm not selling the books because I received funding from Newcastle University to print them all last year, but if you wish to give a donation, you can. But I'm going to read it to you. And this is a way of replicating what would happen in the classroom, because I've been taking this book into classrooms, in schools, in Newcastle, to generate responses from the children. So this is New Home. My name is Joseph, and this is my sister Marion. It was dangerous in our home country. One day, someone called Dad and said we have to leave to be safe. We travelled a long way. A long, long way. We travelled with cars, we got on trucks, we walked through mountains, we also got on a boat. Finally, we got to England. Dad took us to our new home. The house has yellow walls and small windows and a garden. Mum said, it is safe now. It is colder in our new home. Mum knitted scarves for both of us. They made us warm. Dad says we have to go to school. We were happy to wear our scarves, and we felt our mum with us. The school was big, very big. There were lots of other children, and we felt small. After break, I couldn't find my scarf. We couldn't tell the teacher she doesn't understand our language. We were sad when we returned home. Mum hugged us when we told her. The next day at school, a boy called Jacob found the scarf. We made a friend. We went on a school trip. Me and my sister have made new friends. We had a nice time at the beach. We flew a kite with our friends in our new home. That's the end. So there is a huge amount I could go into about the process behind making that, which I don't really have time to, but I would welcome any questions on it. But what I would like to talk about now is the classroom work that this has generated. So I've been into several schools around Newcastle, most of whom I recruited to the project through Newcastle Schools of Sanctuary Network, which is developed to support schools that have a certain number of refugees and asylum seekers in the school. So I would read to them, as I've just done. We would have a classroom discussion, and that would be quite free-form. Lots of different things came out of it. And then each child in the class would get a fabric square and some fabric pens and be invited to respond to this question. What would you like to show or tell these characters if they were to come into your classroom, if you were to meet them? And I've taken the fabric squares, photographed all of them, so I now have this archive of their responses, and then they've been sewn together to make scarves like this one. So it's very long. Please come and take a look at it later, because it's a gorgeous object. And this is just one example of the several that have been produced on the project. So I'd love to show some examples of what these responses have been. So what would you like to show or tell these characters? Football. Football. If you need to know one thing about living in Newcastle, is this. I've disappointed a lot of children when they realise I don't really watch football. Like, who's your favourite player? What team do you support now? I need to start preparing an answer to that question. Lots of messages of welcome. So we've got this, one of the schools produced one of the children reproduced the school logo. And you've got some more text-based ones, so a series of welcoming messages here. How to navigate the school, how to navigate lessons. That's what this one's meant to be on the right. This one on the left is really interesting. I had a conversation with this child and she explained that her and her family had in the past done this thing where they give prayer mats to new Muslim refugee families in the community, and so she drew herself, a picture of herself doing that for the characters in the story. Let's be friends. Everyone's the same language. It's okay not to know. We've got some language teaching happening. A lot of the children would say, like, I would help them learn English if they didn't know English. And then in one class in particular, one child suggested they were going to do the Angel of the North. And so we got quite a lot of Angels of the North. I think about a third of them produced different variations of the Angel of the North. And so this is just one of them. Yeah, the Angel of the North. We got some personal interests. So some of the children just wanted to say, this is some stuff I like. Picture of a cat. Great. I love it. I'm not sure where it came from, but I love it. And then this is an anime that this child loves, and they wanted to say, do you also like this? And if not, let me tell you about it. And what's your favourite food? We'd had a conversation in our discussion time about food and how food can be a way of getting to know other cultures and new people and making people feel welcome. And then we've got some reflections on the story itself. So this could be an illustration of the family on their trip by boat to England. We've got a child here searching through piles of scarves to find their lost scarf. We've got a kind of storyboard retelling of the story here, with a scene of war and then scenes of travel and then a scene of arrival in the new school. So tentatively, I want to suggest some impacts of this project. So for schools, I've received feedback from teachers that it's been a really valuable resource for their classes, to have copies of the book to use, but also to have the discussion generated in class, to have an opportunity for empathy and solidarity. And for me, I'm really interested to think about the the scholarly applications of this, not to just see this as an engagement output, but also to ask how can this feed back onto my research into children's books and into child-produced materials. And so I have a few tentative ways in which that could be done. As I say, this was my ambitious starting question, and I'd originally wanted to produce these outputs, this artwork, and then have another group of children who would analyse it with me. And that's really beyond the scope of this fellowship, but it's something I'd still like to do. But just on my own, I've just wanted to draw out for us now a few themes that I'm noticing. So the first thing that it's been really interesting in a lot of discussions that I've had about children is authorship. Children are really keen to know who wrote this, why, is it real, is it a true story, is it fictional? How do you write a book? They've been amazed when we've explained that the youngest people in the group were 7 and 9 years old, so about the same age as a lot of the children who I've been speaking to in the classroom, right up to the oldest participants were in their 50s and 60s. I had a really exciting discussion in one class, which is very pertinent for the field in which I work in childhood studies, about who should write stories like this. Some of the children seem to believe that, well, some of the children expressed that it doesn't make sense to try and write a story about seeking asylum if you haven't done so yourself, whereas other children in the class thought you should be able to, and they had a bit of a debate about that in the class, so that was very interesting. The second thing is about process. So again, the children were really interested in all the classes to know about the process of making a book, and I think that's important for me for a few reasons, partly because for children to see themselves as creators and potential authors, a demystification of the process of bookmaking is really important. But also I like to see the way that they're intervening in the process of generating stories and engaging with the authors of the book. So this one on the left here was a message that this child wanted to give to the authors of the book, so saying, thank you for putting this amazing story together. I am sorry for the trouble you went through. And this illustration is meant to represent fear. So it's this sort of mechanical fear bot monster thing, which I thought was very cool and very interesting when we're thinking about how like children's interpretations of the creative process and interpretations of the literature that they engage with. And then this child has kind of replicated a picture from the book, but also then asked who made the front of the book. So the front page of the book was a kind of was a collaborative effort using Photoshop to compile a lot of different images, and they were very interested in how that was made and the significance of that kind of collaborative work. And finally, I've called this very grandiose or intertextuality, but I'm thinking about this idea that is important in children's lit about how children's creative outputs are often generated by the kind of found stuff of culture and of literature and of the books that they read. Like it is for all of us really, our outputs are informed by the things that we absorb, the creative things that we engage with. So this one on the left, this child had written All Are Welcome, and that is the title of a book that they had read in class together, which is kind of a celebration of diversity. And this child had used that to create this message of welcome for their children. So using the classroom reading to inform the way that they relate to others with empathy, but also the way that they create their own media. And this one I really like, is there a light at the end of a tunnel? So it might be a statement, it might be a question, and again it's this like found phrase of the light at the end of the tunnel that is kind of present in our culture, and using this to maybe address themselves, maybe to address their peers, maybe to address the characters in the book. And this was also interesting because this was actually a different child's idea. They talked about it together. The child whose idea it was originally had rejected it, and this child had been like, oh, well, I'll make it if you don't want to make it. And so there was a bit of collaboration happening there. So that's me. This is the website of Lily, who I collaborated with on the project. The digital version of the book that I showed you is, you can access that here on this link, and I can also send it round. And yeah, some references. Thank you.